posted
Right.
another one that I copied that from the chat. Yeah, I was just asking what your
Right.
point is. Like I said, I'm not trying. I don't have a big debate rebuttal or anything. I mean, I do have my thoughts on it, but I'm just curious what your point was on it.
Well, it's just that in the celestial theodolite method, the idea is that there's a straight line from the observation point through the peak and right on to the actual geometric position of the star. So you actually calculate your occlusion time based on the time when the geometric, that is to say, not the visual position of the star, but the actual geometric true position of the star from the peak is the same, the angle above the horizon is the same as the angle above the horizon of the peak from the place where the observations are actually being made. So that if you look at that diagram that that either of us posted, that dotted line goes from the observation point to the peak and then goes straight on to the geometric position of the star. So the geometric position of the star becomes really important. But of course, the point is that on a flat Earth, the geometric direction to the star from the observation point would be that dotted line, right? I mean, if that's where the star is, then the geometric direction to the star from the observation point would be in the same direction. It would go along that dotted line, skim the mountaintop, and go on to the star. But if you ask Stellarium what the geometric direction to the star is from Heffron's place, it's substantially lower, more than half the diameter of the full moon or the sun below the peak. It's that 2.093 degree angle there. And as you'll notice, those two directions can't point to the same thing. If they crossed, right, you could have lines that are in different directions that could cross at some point, and then they'd be pointing at the same thing. But those two lines can't possibly point at the same thing, and yet they both purport to be the actual true direction from their bases to that star. And I was trying to get Alan to explain how you understand that on a flat Earth. It's easy to understand on the globe Earth, as you can see in the diagram that you posted, because those angles are measured with respect to local horizontal, and local horizontal is down by exactly that angular difference. Alan considers that a coincidence, but it's not. Those two angles differ by exactly the amount by which horizontal dips downward when you move from Heffron's Place to Pikes Peak.
Okay, well, let me ask this on it, though. The one requires seeing through the mountain. So how are you getting that position if you can't see through the mountain?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. It sounds like you're asking a little bit about this the kind of Ruheath thing. Let me post this, because you may remember. See if I can. Oh, I hope I forgot it here. Maybe I don't.
I mean, I understand the difference. That I mean,
Yeah.
and like that second one that I posted, which was another one you made, sort of shows like when you have a curved surface and the parallel star positions versus, and then the planar.
Yeah, well, what really happens, I mean, if you look at the bottom diagram and the one you posted, what actually happens is the light comes to Earth from very far away, right, from the star, exactly along one of those lines. Both those lines are in the same direction. They're just, they're separated by a little bit. But the light comes to the Earth from exactly that direction. As it enters the atmosphere, it starts to curve downward. And the light that actually gets to Heffron's Place, the base of the base to the where it touches the Earth there at the far right, the light that actually gets there starts curving down, skims the peak, and then joins the light from the peak, travels along the same path, obviously, as light from the peak does, to the observer's eye, which is over there at the right where the red line hits the Earth. So if I were to draw the actual visual thing, that maybe you take that top red line, you go even a little higher, it would start to curve down, curve across the top of the peak, join the light from the peak, and all of that light, the star and the peak, would then get to the observation point.
Okay. Well, how do you get the direction to the star line that's pointing through the mountain, though? Like, how do you know what that direction is without being able to see the star?
Right. Well,
Just...
see, that's a good question, and this is the easy part, right? It's easy to know where the star is because the stars, right? The stars on the celestial sphere are basically fixed. There's tiny little what they call proper motion. You'd never notice it with the naked eye, and over the course of a year, the whole celestial sphere is just rotating around the Earth. If you want to think of the Earth as fixed, and you certainly can, if you want to think of it as fixed, then the celestial sphere rotates around it once per sidereal day. And that motion is constant, right? So if you know where an object is on the celestial sphere, it's easy to determine at any point where it really is, what direction points you toward the actual star. And then what you have to do is take that thing, which is easy to calculate, and determine how high that is above the horizon for the particular observer that you're talking about. If an observer sees that star pretty much overhead, then you don't really have to do much of a correction because refraction doesn't do much to things that are directly overhead. But if you're looking at something near the horizon, if it turns out that the observer has to look through a lot of atmosphere to see that thing, then stellarium makes the standard atmosphere or standard astronomical correction to indicate where the star is. And astronomical corrections are surprisingly stable because they don't involve light traveling, skimming along the surface. It's when light skims over water or over hot pavement or something like that refraction gets kind of difficult to deal with. But astronomical refraction is very stable. So stellarium does a really good job of telling you how much above the geometric position you have to look to actually see the star.
Can I add one thing? Hey, John.
Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. You mentioned like stars are not like exactly fixed; they vary a little bit after a long time, but that's not mostly related to proper motion. Like proper motion is the least significant factors. That's mostly because of the precession of the equinox. So the direction.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
John.
Although, the only thing is that the precession of the equinox doesn't change the positions of stars relative to each other, right?
Oh, that's
Whereas
right, yeah.
proper motion does. Yeah.
Yeah,
John.
Proper motion is what changes the shapes of the constellations, for example.
Yeah, but John, okay, why did you say sidereal day? You know that's a new term for them. Can you break that down for them?
Yeah, no. Well, one of the interesting thing I was just thinking about today, which I think really is kind of interesting, is that, for instance, in the case of, I didn't realize it at first, but when Mike Heffron did his first observations of 39 Aquarii being occluded by Pike's Peak, I hadn't really realized, as I do now, that 39 Aquarii is occluded by Pike's Peak every single day. It goes to that exact same location every day. Sometimes that happens at night, and sometimes it happens during the day. So you can't see it when it happens during the day, but you can see it at night. And every day it happens about 4 minutes. I can never remember, 4 minutes later or earlier. I have to remember how that works. Because the amount of time it takes the Earth to rotate once is about 4 minutes less than 24 hours. And that's because as we orbit the sun, every day as we orbit the sun, the Earth has to turn more than one full rotation in order to see the sun in the same place again, right? As we're moving around the sun, we have to rotate more than 360 degrees to be looking right at the sun again. And that's the difference between a sidereal day and a solar day.
Dear Lord.
So the really fun thing for, because I like the idea of using stars to settle the question of, what is the elevation angle of peaks? Is there globe drop or not? And in my opinion, if you do that correctly, you simply, find a star that will appear at the top of a peak at some point. In other words, find a star that every day its path takes it right by that peak. And you simply ask, what time does that happen today? That's it. And that's the globe Earth prediction for when the occlusion will be.
Yeah, I mean, the interpretation you gave of the sidereal day, I mean, that is one interpretation of it. But I mean, what it is from what we observe is basically just how long it takes for the stars to make one complete rotation, like from the first point of Aries back to the first point of Aries, like two first point of Aries transits. So yeah, it's like the
That's
rate
right.
of stars. But I know that the globe Earth, model claims that that's the rate of the Earth that's causing that rather than the stars themselves. But
Yeah, do you see how that could be made sensical by talking about Earth spin and circuit around the sun? Like,
Are you
from
saying me or Geo? I'm not sure who you're asking.
well, I'm talking about your explanation. Just do you see how that could be built upon the stars, or the sidereal
How
time?
it could be that the Earth is just stationary and the stars are rotating around it, you mean? Because I
Right.
do. I mean, I totally see how you could see that, and that's the point I often make about flat Earth versus geocentrism. We've known the Earth was a sphere for thousands of years, but we've only known the Earth was not the center of the universe for like 250, 300 years, right? That was really hard to figure out.
Right, but isn't the sphere idea the sphere of Saturn, Jupiter, all the planets have their own kind of spheres as far as
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. You mean that they are spheres, or that they? What do you mean by have
Well,
spheres?
in some models are you're talking about,
Oh, you're in the
I think
matrix for
of as when
me.
they talk
Does
about
that mean
spheres, but
I didn't catch that. You were in the matrix, at least for me. I don't know if it was just me.
okay, yeah. I have the worst mic on the internet. I tried to do the crisp there. I'm talking about if you're saying thousands of years ago, I've seen stuff where the model was 7 spheres above the Earth, kind of. So
Oh, the crystalline sphere thing. Is that what you mean? The planet's kind of
so
embedded in crystalline spheres or something. I don't know. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, I'm not trying to catch you or anything. I'm just came to mind. I just came in and heard their explanation, but
No, I was just talking about the fact. I mean, I think the thing about the flat Earth business is, and the reason flat Earth disappeared, and the reason the modern flat Earth is different, is because thousands of years ago, people realized that it was night in some places at the same time that it was day where they were. The ancient models were all that the sun, was up overhead and the Earth is flat. Obviously, the Earth is flat. You just look, you can see that it's flat, right? And then every day the sun comes up and it's day. And when the sun sets, it goes away. It goes around the back, or it goes through a tunnel, or something, and it's night everywhere. And when they realized that it wasn't night everywhere and started kind of looking at how that worked, it became perfectly clear that it couldn't be flat, that it had to be a sphere. So we've known that for a very long time, and modern flat Earth models all have the sun circling overhead, and somehow that's the hard part. Without getting larger or smaller, without getting brighter or dimmer, and somehow,
Rising
appearing.
east and setting west.
Sorry,
Rising east and setting west.
I'm not sure what you mean, but you have to somehow. The point. All I was going to say
during the equinox. Sorry.
Well, all I was going to say is just that the modern flat Earth conception has to make night with a sun that rather than going around behind like all the old models did, or going through a tunnel or something. Now the sun has to stay in the sky and somehow still manage to not illuminate parts of the Earth, even though it's above the Earth. And the only way you can do that is with a sun that gets much further away, gets really dim, really small, and of course doesn't ever set, right? The sun can't set. It can just get small and farther away and dim until you can't see it anymore. That's not what the sun does.
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that as an idea.
You're not going to light up that area that you're
in
anymore.
Right, I get that. But that's not what the sun does. The sun is always half a degree in size, no matter when you look at it, no matter where you look at it from. It's always very bright until it descends to fully below the horizon. It doesn't get smaller, it doesn't get dimmer. It's either in the sky or it's not.
Sure. Oh, there's
all the videos showing that it does get smaller. Nobody's seen those.
Yeah, I've seen them all, but they're all they usually are done improperly without solar filters. I'm actually doing a project right now where I'm taking pictures of the sun on Sunday. I call it my Sunday project. I take proper pictures with solar filters every Sunday. I've taken them from here, from where I live, from Alaska. It doesn't matter where I am. I always get shots that are about a half a degree, but I'm using a flat Earth special. I'm using a Nikon P950 to do it. And so I've got really big, very crisp pictures that show the sunspots, and I'm measuring the diameter. And we just passed the minimum. It got to be about 0.524 degrees in diameter in early July. I started in January when it was 0.542 degrees in diameter, and it's now starting to get larger again. But it happens so slowly. It gets like a thousandth of a degree bigger every week, or maybe a few days, something like that.
Well, would you be interested in addressing this one? This is with a solar filter, and he shows angular size change. It's only 1.5 minutes long. It's pretty short. I think this was mirrored on David Weiss's channel, but it's not from him. It's just on his channel because he mirrors a bunch of stuff on his app channel or whatever. So I think it's let's see who the original video was. But yeah, that one shows angular size change with a solar filter. So just wondered if you'd seen that one.
Oh, sorry. Let me shut up for a few moments and I'll take a look at it. Yeah, okay. So I've seen that. Yeah, so those are pictures without proper solar filters. You can always tell when you are not using a solar filter because you can't see the sunspots And you can kind of see in that one that they're saying looks a little bigger. It's because it's overexposed, and you get this kind of enhanced apparent size because of the overexposure at the limb of the sun. I'll show you a video that I made. I took pictures last year. I took pictures of the sun with a proper solar filter, and you can see the sunspots every half hour all day long. And it's perfectly obvious that the sun, I can't measure it to perfect accuracy, but to within 0.1%. That's about the precision that I can measure. There's no change in the sun, except for in the morning and in the evening when atmospheric refraction makes its vertical size a little smaller. The sun gets a little small. The moon does too. Moon and the sun both are actually a little smaller vertically when they're on the horizon than they are when they're high in the sky. That's a weird thing because it's not what you get psychologically, right? When you look at them, you kind of get the sense that it's the other way around. Anyway, I'll get these things and post them for you.
Right, because it's close to structures or features on the ground.
Right, that's one of the things that people suggest is responsible, and I think that's it's kind of controversial. People don't really know why that is because it's a purely psychological effect. When you measure it, you see that it's not bigger, but it's not entirely clear why it looks bigger. I like that explanation too.
Yeah, well, the hydrogen alpha is the way to, see the sun. I mean, filter, you do get sunspots, but I don't know, if you think about it kind of like a glare, like off of a windscreen, like anyway. But to think thousands of years ago that the atmosphere may have been very different. There's even times when there was no sun, the kind of twilight or purple haze ideas, but maybe they could see a lot farther. So
Yeah, John, just to respond to some of those points, I don't think angular size change is necessarily required to have a sun above a planar surface. I think that if it depends on what the assumptions are. I mean, if somebody's assuming the sun is a ball or a sphere of like a physical ball, and it functions the same way as a physical ball would on Earth, then yeah, I understand that inconsistency, because yeah, if you're in a football field and you take, let's say a 10-foot diameter sphere and you put it up above you and then you move that sphere away, of course, yeah, it's gonna change a lot in angular size. So I mean, I guess if one assumes, now maybe somebody is claiming that, or maybe you're thinking someone is, if they're saying, oh, they're using the term flat Earth and they're saying there's a ball up there. I don't know if somebody is or is not saying that. I know that people have a wide range of viewpoints of what the sun is. So I understand that idea. If it was a spherical ball like that it would behave differently. But that uses that assumption, though. It incorporates that assumption that it is some kind of a physical object like that. I've posted, you've seen this, but I'll post it again. But with collimated lenses, you can actually create a circle of light or any object, and it will not change angular size. When just pull it up real quick. This one here, where it shows like 3 different examples. One of them, they have a lens and then an object on like a sheet of paper. I'm going to play it on the live stream real quick while I'm discussing it. But yeah, so this one, it shows with these collimated lenses, it shows like one example where it has a light source and then a lens and then a sheet of paper. And on the sheet of paper, it shows has like a circular object. And it's the projected light through the lens that's making the light on the paper. And then as you move the paper back and forth, it doesn't change angular size. Then there's a second one with his hand, where he's moving his hand in between and his hand doesn't change angular size. It looks like it does a little in that one. The second one is kind of the least representative of what I'm referring to. And then the third one, though, is definitely representative, because it's kind of like you see that system he has where there's like a circular object and then there's the lens, and that whole thing is being moved forward and back. Like that whole contraption in the third example is being moved forward and backward. So for that third one, if the sun either had a lens in front of it or was a lens itself or functioned in that way, then just like that third one, when he moves it around, he's moving it further and closer from the camera and it's not changing angular size. So that whole contraption with the lens is making it to where even when you move that whole contraption forward and backward, it doesn't change the angular size of the sun. So, I mean, if the sun, it's just speculation. I'm not saying the sun is a lens or that the dome's a lens or anything like that. I'm just saying that if it functioned in any way that this shows, then that means that that whole sun thing, whatever we call the sun, no matter where it is, it would remain the same angular size. So you can have that effect. I'm just saying it can be replicated on the ground. I'm not saying this is proof that that's what it is up there. I'm just saying you can replicate objects not changing angular size with just even basic collimated lenses. So that shows that it certainly would be possible at the least that there could be an object like that in the sky or some kind of a light source that would not change angular size, and thus being, you know, on the planar surface without having the dramatic angular size change the way it would if it was like a physical ball or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a proof of concept, but I mean, you got a long ways to go to make that work, no matter where you are on Earth looking toward the sun. And I just kind of go for Occam's razor. It's a lot easier just to believe that the sun's a thing. It's a long ways away, and that's why it's always the same size. And especially, and I will just point out too, of course, that when you take pictures of the sun with good telescopes and see the obvious physical processes that are going on its surface, the sunspots, the flares, the hydrogen alpha stuff, the cells, it's pretty clear it's a thing, right? I mean, either that or somebody's going to a lot of trouble to make us think something that's, you know, really just a projection or something else isn't that.
Whatever it is helps my plants grow.
Well, yeah, you've heard of Crow 777. He's watching rotation, flares, you know, and he's not a flat earther.
I don't know
skeptic.
that reference. Is this somebody here? Sorry, I haven't been here for a while.
So about
I mean,
Crow
is it
777?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of.
I thought he's pretty much like planar, stationary, flat Earth, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, he's close, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. He kind of avoids define, you know. But
You're
yeah,
breaking up a little bit, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, nobody's going anywhere. I got to get ahead, and then you have Jay Tolan. He's definitely, I mean, he's got his airplane infrared miles or whatever it is, but he's done some ground surveying and crazy calibration and stuff, shots, but now he's doing the moon as a physical object, also rotating, or in a different way, I guess. But.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, John, to a degree that it's definitely an object, like the sun and the moon have, and we were looking earlier at sunspots and some of these things that even amateur telescopes can pick up. So I hear you on that it does look like it's an object of some sort, but it is also a celestial object, something we can't necessarily go to and touch and feel and, you know, get any tangibility. Obviously, government agencies claim that they've touched and felt the moon, but that's a whole other thing if you want to trust the government and, you know, their alleged adventures in space. But that's its own kind of category. But I do agree. I mean, it looks like something. But I will say, I'm not saying the sun and the moon are holograms. Like, I'm not necessarily asserting that. But I mean, holograms can look very physical. You know, like, I mean, holograms can look pretty real and even look like, oh yeah, that's a physical thing there. But it's really not. It's light. So I'm just saying the nature of light is pretty amazing, and it's definitely within the realm of possibilities that could be just a luminous object, even though it does seem to have like you were saying, the features and the textures and everything to them, especially the moon.
Yeah, and
I mean, I see logically
balloon.
why you would think why you could, like, I understand the general logic as to thinking that they could just be physical objects, but The moon, like, there's ways in which it doesn't act like a physical object, though. Like the way it wavers. I know you could say that's atmosphere, but also when you can see the blue sky through the moon, and it has these certain, like, kind of transparent qualities to it.
Yeah, the famous lunar wave. It's Crow. I was saying the high altitude footage in that kind of hot spot right below the sun. It doesn't seem like a point source 90 million miles away kind of thing. Necessarily, the corpuscular ray stuff that could be scattering, but probably off an atmospheric layer.
Well, if anybody's interested, I just posted the latest updates on this graph that I'm making. The red squares in there are kind of my eyeball determinations of the size of a circle fitted to the solar disk on the pictures that I'm taking of the sun, starting back in early January through now. And the green line is the theoretical prediction from the elliptical orbit of the sun, the fact that we're closer to the sun in January by 2 or 3 million miles than we are right now, especially we're in early July. I don't know. I really love doing this stuff. Not that I don't kind of know the answer, but it's fascinating to me to realize that just any schmo can go out with a P950, take pictures for themselves, and see that this is what happens.
That's angular size change throughout the year?
Yeah, that's right. So it started out at 0.542 degrees in early January, got gradually smaller until about 0.524 degrees in early July.
Well, you can just measure with pixels, right? That's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. The size is generally about, I think it's about 2,300 pixels. And I can get the size probably, I figure even by eyeball. Oh, there's also, a friend of mine wrote a program that took my pictures and would just automatically calculate the size. It gets slightly different things than I do. But typically the program is off by like less than a pixel from what I decide. That's out of 2,500 pixels. So it's, I'm getting easily 0.1% accuracy in my just eyeball measurements.
See, right now
we're in the opposite.
Go ahead, you.
Oh, go ahead. You can go first. Well, we'll just write on that. If your point was, do you think if you were in the South, John, you would get the same? That it would be smaller in July and larger in January?
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are on Earth. It doesn't, being on one side of the planet or another side of the planet, that's just a few thousand miles out of 93 million. It makes no difference in the apparent size.
No, I know it is claimed with that. I was just wondering if you agree with it. Go ahead, Alan. Sure. He was going to go next.
I was just wondering if John's aware of our 11-year solar cycles within greater solar cycles. We're at the maximum right now for this year in the solar maximum.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I did my doctoral thesis on the aurora borealis, and of course that's a thing that kind of the intensity of the aurora tends to cycle with the solar cycle as well.
Awesome. You aware of the Carrington event?
I think I don't know what that is right now. Remind me, maybe I don't. Maybe I do. I don't know.
Okay. One of the greater cycles, the 11-year cycles, I forget. Anyway, in 1800s...
Was that when the sun... No, the Maunder minimum I'm thinking of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The interrupted power distribution in up in eastern Canada, and it just the phenomena took place with telegraphy. The telegraph lines, they come up to them and saw sparks coming out of them. Some were operating with no batteries during this time. There's it was a phenomena that took place. Carrington event. I'll just post it.
There was a geomagnetic storm due to a solar flare, just like what we had a couple years ago, but magnitude stronger.
And fortunately,
Yeah.
the only power lines we had were telegraphs back then.
Fortunately, yeah. No, that's people worry about what something like that could do to the power grid.
They had electricity pretty early, apparently. Somehow. I mean, was it the Chicago World's Fair's famous generators? But I don't know if you guys the Edison. Yeah, as far as electric infrastructure.
It's interesting reading. I'm just kind of skimming over the Carrington event thing. I guess Carrington was an astronomer, right, who observed the flare. And that would have been kind of interesting because, I mean, at the time, I don't know how accurately, even in 1859, we knew the distance to the sun pretty well. But I think it wasn't until the 1900s that we really nailed that down. And I don't know that there would have been any appreciation that an observed flare on the sun would have any obvious effects on the Earth. So that must have been, when that happened, when the actual disruption happened, and they kind of, dotted the I's and crossed the T's, that must have been kind of a big aha moment.
It was for me when learning of it, and the different perspectives of different individuals that were there experiencing it. Very enlightening, eye-opening.
Is there anything worth considering that solar flares, the way they affect the Earth, would make more sense if the sun was actually closer rather than 93 million? Why something 93 million miles away would affect the Earth like that? Because I know there are interesting correlations. Like people's like pacemakers go crazy during solar flare times, and there's like more people in hospitals with heart issues and heart rhythm issues, and electronics can be altered. And but I'm saying if the Earth was actually part of this more local system, and it was connected to the magnetic fields and everything of the Earth, wouldn't it make more sense that that's why it would affect rather than if it was just a ball way out in space, 93 million miles
So
away?
I think it would make less sense because if the sun were close and local, you'd expect the effects to take time to travel across the whole Earth. But pretty much the whole Earth experiences it simultaneously. So it's so far away, 93 million miles away, but then the effects arrive simultaneously on Earth. But if the sun is just 3,000 miles away, you'd expect the places that are right under the sun to experience it sooner than,
And more
10,000
strongly,
miles
right?
away.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. Strong.
No, I
that's
think
true.
I think
Well,
the I think the you can change the distance to the sun to anything you want as long as you don't make it local. As soon as you make it local, I think you can have a really hard time explaining stuff like that.
Wouldn't the speed of light? What's the difference in the timing? Isn't the speed of light pretty fast?
Well, they don't travel. I don't know if you're saying. I mean, the disturbances don't get to us at the speed of light. It's the speed of the solar wind, which I think is like 400 kilometers per second or something like that. So it gets here really quickly, but nothing like the speed of light.
magnetic. I don't
Yeah, but I
think
think
that's
just but what with Matthew
Go
said, I
ahead.
mean that implies that it's like it has a physical, kind of like an earthquake, like it has like a blast zone. But I mean, if it
Right,
could
it's
still be
physical.
local, it could. Well, why couldn't it be local and also be instant across the whole plane of the Earth, and the sun still be relatively local?
Yeah, it's a wave through the field.
That's what you're saying. If it was like really, really fast.
Well, so
Yeah.
when you say it affects the whole Earth on the heliocentric model, wouldn't it only, I don't know too much about the phenomenon, but wouldn't it only affect one side, presumably, or
Oh yeah,
what was
of
the
course.
observation?
Evidently, it was somewhat isolated to part.
Well, it tends to, things like that tend to disrupt northern latitudes more because when there's a disruption in the solar wind, the magnetic field of the Earth kind of merges with the magnetic field in the solar wind at like the 70-degree latitude. The reason auroras happen not at the North Pole, although they do sometimes, but they tend to happen at 70 degrees type latitudes, is because of those are the field lines that end up kind of connecting. There's like a cusp, sorry, where the dipole field of the Earth opens up to the solar wind. And it's kind of a direct entry point for particles in the solar wind. When the solar wind is agitated, the magnetic field lines in that region get particularly jerked around. And that's why you tend to get your biggest effects in northern latitudes. The equator doesn't really see much going on during geomagnetic storms.
So wouldn't it be symmetrical, like the same thing in the southern 70s, but just that nobody lives there?
Right. Yeah, it pretty much is, except of course, I mean, so time of year is a little different, right? There are times when the southern hemisphere is pointed at. Well, it is a different, of course, when in the winter and the summer, there's a difference. The difference just shows up kind of in in the precise location of where those magnetic field lines come in. The bigger difference is day-night, because on the day side, where the solar wind is actually impinging on the magnetic field of the Earth kind of gets compressed. And on the tail side, on the far side, the magnetic field of the Earth stretches way out, as you probably know, past the moon. That's like, it gets out to 50, 100 times the diameter of the Earth. Whereas on the front side, it's only about six Earth radii or something. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Put a GIF in chat, kind of roughly demonstrating that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good. Yep.
Well, the percentage difference from 1771 to now is, at the noise level.
Yeah, pretty small. Yeah.
What about the
Well,
moon? When did we
There's
get
this
like,
meme that everyone always. Sorry, go ahead, Bacon.
Yeah.
There's this meme that everyone always shoots around that has a bunch of different ones, but that's going back before 1659.
I'm
Will you say
guessing
Yeah, the
Bacon?
thing.
distant.
And
I
before
was just gonna say,
1650, and before 1659, I mean, you got to cut them some slack, because that's pre-technology. It's all pencil and paper and quill. But regardless, you still have the Venus and Mercury passing between the Earth and Sun. So you got to have a lot of enough room to accommodate 2 other planets.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, one of the things that's interesting it's important to kind of understand is that the Greeks knew how far it was to the moon. They didn't have it exactly, but it's easy to determine the distance to the moon just from observing an eclipse from 2 different places and calculating from the parallax. So they knew the moon. I don't know what their specific number was, but they knew that it was tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles away, and they knew that the sun was much further away than the moon, just because of the way the phases of the moon work. If you look at the moon, when you look at the moon and it's a half moon, the sun is 90 degrees away from it. And if you just kind of draw how would we see that phase from the Earth? It only happens if the sun is much further away than the moon is. So by the time Eratosthenes did his experiment, he wasn't considering the possibility of a local sun being responsible for the shadows, because the Greeks knew that the sun was immensely far away. They didn't know how far, but they knew it was immensely far, not local.
Well, are you saying that if the sun was much, much closer, the moon, much more of the moon would have been highlighted? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. If you think about like the phase, in other words, when we see half of the moon lit up, the sun has to be at 90 degrees to the moon. Well, it could do that by just being a little bit away from the moon. But in fact, we see it at 90 degrees to the moon. Well, if it's 90 degrees to us and 90 degrees to the moon, well, then pretty close to 90 degrees. It's got to be really far away to do that. You can do that if you hold up a ball during the day. When you see the moon, hold up a ball, you'll see that the phase of that ball is exactly the same as the phase of the moon, because the sun is illuminating it just like it does the moon.
Right, but those Earthshine crescents and the blue sky just kind of are outside of that explanation a little bit in some ways. Like, it makes you think that's
I'm not sure what is that you're referring to?
Well, when you have a crescent moon and then you see most of the moon in low light, and then you have this, that's obviously exposure, but you have details of the moon. And then the blue sky, like a half moon during the day when you have blue sky. And then I guess there's footage of stuff behind that somehow. I know that, set that aside, but it just kind of, as far as
I'm not completely sure what you mean, but
and then so Crow 777 has done a lot of telescope work for a long time, but he kind of claims that it not only not visible, it's undetectable with, I guess it's hydrogen alpha. I don't know. He's been doing that, but filters and.
But John, you're up.
John, do you have a Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Well, I was waiting to get in. I just want to say, John, do you have because I got to post this image. Do you have any comparisons, just for reference, that the shadow is the same on a ball on the ground and the moon? Because there's this one which was posted many years ago as proof of that. And then a guy named Brandon, who used to run a channel, he just zoomed in on it and showed that the shadows were not the same. So just for reference, do you have one that shows that they are, just for like a ball on the ground and the moon? Because
I could search for one. I don't know. I'm not sure. When you say not the same, I see kind of what you mean. I guess what you mean is it looks like there's more of a shadow on the ball on the stick than there is of a shadow on the moon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like at a different phase, technically.
I think, I wonder, I kind of suspect that if I took that black circle for the moon, I just made it a little bit bigger. I could convince you, if I cropped that picture a little, made the black circle a little bigger, and then shrunk it down so that it's the same size again,
I
but
don't think
had
so.
more shadow in it, I'll bet I could make you believe that it's almost the same. I don't
I'll
know.
give a different excuse for the globe here. I don't think though the ball is sufficiently far in the same direction of the moon. It's probably closer and somewhat more to the right than the moon is. So you get to see more of the left. So they don't match up.
Yeah, well,
The
I
ball
recall
has
when
to
I
be in the
saw
same
I,
direction.
rec- I
I
recall
think
when I
that's
saw
what
that
Geo
video.
is suggesting. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I recall when I saw the video, he was not the moon and the water tank were at different azimuths, and it's important that they be at the same azimuth.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have
That's
the
what I'm saying.
full.
They have to be in the same direction.
I don't think I have the
Does
full
that take on
picture video of that on my files. Does anyone else have that by any chance? Like the full? I just have that one that was cropped.
I bet
It is a
that
little
ball is to the right of the moon, so you can see
it's a
more
little
of its left.
suspicious when it's not. I mean, if it were one picture, it would be a lot more compelling just having a picture of a ball and a stick and another picture of the moon. God knows, what's going on there if you're trying to convince somebody you'd like to really have them in the same picture. There we go.
No, but that
Something
comes
like
from yeah, but that was one that was brought up years ago, and it was a whole debate point that globe earthers were bringing, and there is a full video or image of it. I forget whether it's a freeze frame or a video, but and then Brandon just like live, did that, and then it was sort of this whole thing where it didn't match. I'm not saying it does or doesn't in general. I don't think this is really like exclusive of a Earth shape situation. I was just wondering if you had any. Okay, Matthew posted one, but that's still not the same.
It's got dimples on it. I don't see any dimples on the moon.
But I mean, that one I posted came from something else. It was just cut like that. But yeah, I wouldn't use that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot
I
of
want to see
pictures
the
like this
original one.
out there, and I guess you can come to your own conclusions as to whether it's a general. I mean, the best thing would be just to do it yourself. Right? Anybody can do this. So.
Right, but do you see why we want video with multiple things in the frame in 2025 from the 80s?
Yeah, I mean, I really think in a situation like this, because it's so easy to just do it yourself. I don't even know why we do video wars. Why don't we just all go out and do it and just see what happens?
An electronic plasma nodal point. Are you asking me directly? I mean, it's interesting. I definitely think the sun is electrical.
100%.
Plasma.
That's why I call it our solar circuit. We are directly tied into it. I view Earth as a capacitor, whatever the hell the shape is. Just recognizing potential and differentials and how when they meet, the magic happens, basically.
Yeah, and you said circuit, which is interesting terminology because I mean you could say the sun makes a circuit in its own way throughout the. I'm just pulling up an image real quick. It's a daily circuit. You could use it in that sense, but I've been thinking of like the idea that the sun is actually like like if you have electricity or a capacitor or even a wire, when you charge that wire and then you get what we would call the flow of electricity, as it flows. I know there's different ideas of exactly like whether it's in the wire or actually around the wire that actually flows around the wire instead of in it in that way. But and then there's like a nodal point that sort of travels as it were, like a spark or like a way lightning works or like an electrical shock that kind of travels through the wire. What if the sun is actually that? Like it's actually it's part of an electrical circuit and the sun is actually traveling upon the electric field lines and then is like a nodal point that's like a nodal point of charge on that actual field line in that circuit rather than an
Agreed.
object, but more of like a charge on an actual circuit line.
Yeah, I view nodal points as well. I don't know if we're using the terms and meaning the same exact thing. I mean, that's very unlikely, but yeah, the term I use the same terminology. It's a nodal point. It's a node.
Well, like, and then this image here, which is just the basic of the field lines of an electric field, and I just put two little yellow circles. But it's like you have the 24-hour sun in the north, the 24-hour sun in the south, 6 months apart, and then it goes straight at the equator. So it's like the sun follows those electric field lines as well. So like the pattern of it, and then the stars, the way they're straight at the equator, and then the two star rotations. It's just fascinating how the sky matches what an actual like an electric field circuit pattern is.
Well, that's like people try to claim to me, back including to taking astrology, that outer space was a vacuum, absolute zero, no molecular activity, and I can't buy that with your money. You know what I mean? You probably don't have that much. I would, yeah, I mean, just, different perspectives, but I just don't view outer space as empty nothingness, vacuum, devoid of molecular activity.
One argument for the space being mostly empty is if you watch the ISS go over, you can pretty clearly see it's going pretty fast, about 17,000 miles an hour. And if there were any air up there, it would burn up. So, it's mostly vacuum up there.
And there's, well, yeah, I'm not going to say there's not a differential in pressure. My problem with nothingness is there's way too much in space to call it nothingness. And there is obvious electrical charge transfer between us and the sun, at least, not to mention in early radio, what we recognized when the extended circuits, how they affected RF propagation.
I'm sorry, weren't there tires in space? Not that Elon is, but
How dare he?
inflated tires. Maybe it was nitrogen.
Yeah,
Ford
but so like what does a typical tire hold? Like 30 pounds per square inch?
plus, yeah.
So if you took a 30-pound per square inch tire and put it on a rocket and put it into space next to the ISS, now it would have 45 pounds instead of 30 pounds. I don't know what the burst pressure is, but it might not burst.
Sure, yeah. Well, you're saying air was burning up, so I mean materials, I suppose. And the radiation, like a flare being a radiation burst, opposed to a magnetic disturbance that affects the field on Earth.
Yeah, I don't know where somebody's getting air there. That's a pretty interesting take on it, Matthew Learns.
On what? The pressure?
Oh, you said something about air being there. And
Yeah, 30 to 45 pounds.
I'm saying I was talking about the tires on the Roadster. The Tesla Roadster that Elon allegedly launched into space. Some people say, "Oh, those tires would burst," but they might not because it's only 15 pounds per square inch more than air.
I think about the burning up of something. The vacuum is created by.
Well, that's low Earth orbit. ISS is not in outer space. That's two totally different subjects here.
And it just, like I said, it'd be great if there was a camera on the ship that releases the car. We don't need to talk about that example, but like, just get the extra camera. You can do it. I know it's expensive, but double the price, send two up so they can watch each other do it instead of a mounted camera that looks at the engine or whatever every time.
I'm just pointing out the simple fact that saying that there's no there doesn't work when this energy transfer obviously takes place. There's some there.
What sound? Light slows down to sound, or is it sound slows down to light? It's more sound.
Oh,
That's
I'm
just
just talking about
bullshit. I'm sorry.
well, you said it, so I don't have to.
How does it propagate? Yeah, what's the connection?
Just simple longitudinal. Never mind. It's just propagation of energy.
Derek, on your point about the tides, you were mentioning like a bathtub or like a contained system where the water would slosh back and forth. But what if there was like inlets, entries and exits down in the depths of the ocean that would then kind of suck water in and out in different places. So sort of like a bathtub that also had a bunch of different drains where water would be coming in and out of. That's often how I've considered there may be that factor going on.
I think it's almost necessary. That water's got to come from somewhere, and especially as I said, like you've got sections which don't seem to sort of characteristically show much tide at all, like Jamaica, pretty close to other places that are got a pretty extreme tides. So, I mean, where's this water coming from except for underneath? And then, I mean, I suppose at that point I've got to assume that it's sort of undisclosed or untalked about, like that such chambers would be underneath the ocean. You know, some sort of like Titanic conspiracy at that point. But they control what we perceive in the sky, and they control what we perceive below us as well. So it's all part of the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like one of my favorite things to do is go to the springs, and some of the springs they say are so deep they haven't even been to the very like the source. I always find that really interesting.
Just infinite water.
Just
Yeah,
water
that is
all the
pretty
way
wild.
down.
Doesn't
I
say
just
in
imagine
the
those chambers though, with that amount of water that's coming in and out, Geo, like it must be churning. Like to go into one of those little tunnels or something. Imagine if you get down in there in a little sub or something. That's a lot of water to be pushing up and down. So
I know.
yeah,
That'd be a wild trip to do that. Yeah, it's a massive amount of water that's changing. That's true during tides. Like when you think about how much, you're just on the beach at the ocean, how much the tide comes up, comes down. You think of how much water you would have to displace to have that happen. And then you think of how big the oceans are. There's a massive amount of water moving around. Yeah. Gravitational, that's what they call it. But well, dude, I've told the story often. Like in the Bahamas, there was this guy Jacques Cousteau who was back in like in the, I think it was probably the 70s, 80s, but he was doing all this studying of blue holes and down in areas like in the Caribbean and the Bahamas where he was like, it was documented where he would go to like one of these blue holes that when the tide goes in, so it sucks water in, which apparently you got to be careful not to be swimming or snorkeling anywhere around it because you can get sucked in and basically die if you don't have enough air to get you through for all that time because you can't get out. But he was putting like when the tide was going in, he would put a bunch of like blue dye, and then the dye would be sucked into the blue hole, and then he would look as to where the dye would come out. And sometimes he was finding it like miles and miles offshore, off is where it was coming out, out in the middle of the ocean. Whereas like the blue hole might have been like near some land or something, and then way out, miles out is where the blue dye would come out. So yeah, there's like channels like that blue hole goes apparently all the way out to the ocean. So who knows how many of those there are carrying water and even more massive amounts of water, maybe even at deeper levels. So I was going to say on the tides, they claim obviously their gravity theory, but what about like the idea that the sun and the moon do actually change the ocean, but because it's salt water and that there's an electrical connection between the sun and the moon? And of course, there's the idea that gravity is actually an electrostatic or has some kind of foundations in electrostatics. But like the idea that the way that salt water is more conductive and the fact that there's tides in the ocean and much less so. Well, or really, I mean, are there really tides at all on the fresh water, or is that just because the fresh water is being adjusted by the ocean's tides? I've always wondered that too. Like, I know they claim there's like a tiny, like a millimeter, in some areas of tides with the fresh water. But is that even the actual freshwater effect, or is it actually just the effect of the oceans having tides, and then the freshwater gets affected by that? I've wondered that if that's the case, because there's usually some connection to the ocean somewhere deep down in the water system, and so if the tides in the ocean are changing, does that cause the freshwater? But yeah, I was just saying, just the idea of the general like electrostatic components of the sun and the moon having a cause on the tides, in addition to maybe underground like tunnels that are pulling and pushing water, which also may be an electric effect, which would make sense why they could call it gravity, because they kind of steal the electrostatic, like Coulomb's law, they steal that for their gravitational theories. So they kind of just dress it up in a different form, but it's like the two sides of the coin. Is it their gravity bending warp in space-time, or is it actually just the electrostatic nature of water and then the celestials?
But charge density can be measured, Geo. If it's electrostatics, we would see the changes in the charge density.
I think they correlate, often. Like there are correlations to the moon and the tides, no doubt. But yeah, it'd be interesting if they're actually tied together. I think it could be a possibility.
There's definitely water underground, under land, oceans, lakes. Well, described and documented, but I haven't.
Remember, there's a high tide on both sides of the Earth, which makes sense on a spherical Earth where one side is being pulled. There's not really an explanation on the flat Earth because there's not even a flat Earth map that you could say, well, why is there this sudden tide on this side of the flat Earth that's not near the moon?
Right, but there's places with no tide or extreme tide, and kind of a layout of magnetic lines. Talking about.
I mean, the tides happen within a few hours of a location that's on the meridian of the moon. And then there's going to be because the coastal geography and the ocean floor influences the size of the tides and when they precisely appear. But there's no question that you have this cycle 4 times a day of high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. And it's on the antipode of the globe Earth as well. It's not really a explanation why that occurs on the flat Earth. Why do you have this antipodal tide?
I would say that the sky is like a clock. The moon is part of the entire sort of working apparatus, but there's no mechanism that you could define or measure, for example, between the moon and the tides.
No, the mechanism is that gravity is tugging on the oceans of the Earth.
Yeah, well, you can't measure that. It's not measurable. When the moon comes around and it's affecting the tides, yeah, you can see the correlation, but you cannot prove that. So you could only say that it's indicative of some type of informative explanation. So when you see the moon coming, you can be informed that there's going to be a high tide or a low tide. But it's not a mechanism that actually controls the tides. It's just there for our timekeeping and our purposes.
We have gravimeters that can measure when the moon is on your meridian. So saying that there's no way to measure that is not true.
Would say that again? What's this device called? This magical device?
It's called a gravimeter. It's also used to determine, the entire petroleum industry revolves around. It's the stuff that PhD Tony does for a living. These gravimeters can be used to detect. They're used to detect gravitational changes on the surface of the Earth, which allows them to also detect large deposits of oil and things like that. Because the gravity around the Earth is not uniform.
So now you're saying that gravity is a measurable force.
Of course it's a measurable force.
Well, it's not. It's supposed to be a pseudo force. It's not actually a force. It's a pseudo force.
Yeah, but a pseudo force is still a measurable force. It's just not a force in all reference frames. That's what pseudo force is meant.
No,
when you get pushed into the side of it. when you get pushed into the side of your car when it's taking a turn, that's a pseudo force as well, and that can be measured,
No,
right?
it's called,
If somebody,
no, it needs to be there's a thing called a first order measurement. It needs to be able to be measured in a first order measurement. Look it up.
I think what he's trying to say is called a gravitimeter, and it's basically a set amount of weight on a spring scale, right? And then the measurement will alter. That's the old school type that they use to evaluate gravity, gravitational anomalies. Excuse me.
Is that supposed to be the like, I don't know, the tool or the technology that they use to find the oil? I hear that's how they go, like trying to find oil. They use some sort of gravity sensing thing. That's what they call it anyway. If they
well, I
want to
mean,
dig a
there's
new
multiple
oil
types
well.
of.
All right, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's multiple types of gravimeters. The most precise ones, they drop an object within a vacuum, and then they measure the speed that it falls at to calculate the gravity, the local gravity. Those are accurate enough to, many decimal places of G.
Takes out the aerodynamics of the equation.
So do you say that it drops something and then what?
And it measures
senses how much resistance is created?
No, it measures the speed that it falls at in a vacuum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, you talk about this. It's like a little BB, and it drops the BB, and then it measures. Are you talking about one of those? There's a couple different types of gravimeters.
Yeah, absolute gravimeter.
You guys know that you have a gravimeter in your phone. You can measure changes in G just using your phone. I have an app that just constantly reads out G, and it's pretty accurate to like 3 or 4 decimal places.
Isn't that an accelerometer or something? Is there
it's an accelerometer. That's right. It's an accelerometer.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it's easy enough. They're bloody
So
good,
where's
though.
the
I use
data?
my phone for everything. I got it as a level for all my construction work. It's crazy.
Where do you think the data could be found that is measuring the gravitational force or the gravity, whatever the pulling force is, coming from the moon, controlling the tides?
Oh, well, you can certainly. I don't know if I doubt that the gravimeter in my phone. I should do that. Should try it. I don't think it's accurate enough to measure that, but it's definitely measurable.
It's not nearly accurate enough to measure the effect of the moon's gravity on your meridian, but
I mean, it's not a first order detection either. It's not like a prime. It's throwing a BB or something, or it's actually testing the effect on another piece of material, right?
Well, all a gravimeter really does is it. I mean, it's like one way to construct a gravimeter would be to just take a block and attach 6 springs to it, one at the top and bottom, one at the left and right, one at the front and back, to a case. And then, if that case is subject to gravity, which is the same thing as accelerating, if it accelerates, absolutely, the block that's attached to all the springs will distort those springs. And all a gravimeter does is just measure how much those springs are distorted by the force of gravity, which is, as somebody was saying, was a pseudo force. You can generate gravity just by accelerating. That's all gravity really is.
Even Neil deGrasse Tyson said they're not really sure how the tides are controlled. It's just a theory.
Yeah, I don't think they can claim empirical evidence for the moon affecting the tides.
I don't know. I just think it's an interesting phenomenon. Like, you cannot detect electricity if you're inside the field. You have to find a neutral ground source outside of it. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then what is it? The only way they can really sort of do any detection of gravity is through measuring its effect on other objects. So if electricity is affecting objects, but you can't detect it because you're inside the field, I mean, it opens a can of worms of problems on the heliocentrism side of things.
Well, it definitely affects mainstream model as is taught now, for sure. I don't know about implications on shape of the planet, but it definitely doesn't jive with what we perceive in practical application.
Well, the mainstream model definitely would never consider that the celestial sphere that we have above us, whether or not it's a sphere, is actually a purpose constructed timepiece for our information. They would never consider that it's constructed and it was designed in a specific way for us to be able to use it as a way to refer every day. That's where the mainstream is lost, because they think it's all just by happenstance and by chance and by evolution and by mistake and by accident.
Well, then if it was designed to be a timekeeping piece, then what's the point of the days where you can't even see it when it's a new moon?
Well, obviously they know that it's a new moon. They know that
Well,
it's
you
a
can take
new
your eye
moon,
off a clock,
and it happens every month,
but it's
right?
yeah. You can take your eye off the clock and it still keeps turning, right? Just when it comes
Yeah,
back
just
and
You're right.
appears again, then
Yeah, just because the hour hand goes behind the minute hand for a moment doesn't mean that the hour hand is not still happening in the cyclical nature of it.
I like that one better. That's a
Yeah,
good
but
one.
you can see the hour. You know when you know exactly where the hour hand is when you can't see it. You know it's behind the minute hand. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean you don't know where it is, right? But if you can't see the moon, you don't know where it is, and you can't see the phase of the moon, right?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
don't
can you
know if
see the
it's
moon at the
you
moment,
don't
sir?
know. I don't know. I guess I can see it right now. I just saw it.
I can't. So
Yeah,
then
there's a lot of reasons.
it's not to assume that it's not there. I just assume it's over there. It's not within my field of view.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons you might not see the moon. Obviously, clouds or just any number of, or a new moon cycle. But I mean, the thing is, the moon approaches the sun in a very consistent way, and then the last phase, and then when it completes the waning and then starts the waxing, and then there's that new moon phase of it. But then it exits from the sun at the rate that is expected that it would be in that position, you know? So just like if the hour hand goes behind the minute hand or vice versa, or the hands blend, they, what's called applying and separating. So they apply and then they separate. So the applying is when it's the moon would be getting close to the sun and then it reaches a conjunction, which is right when they're in the same position, and then it separates. So during applying and separation, there's a rate there that still makes it very consistent as a time clock. I don't think you have to see the moon during the new moon cycle to still use. In fact, it's actually helpful as the cycle because it lets you know when the cycle resets.
Yeah, like imagine watching an eclipse and it's like, you know, like all of a sudden you get total eclipse and you start saying, I don't know where the sun is. I don't know.
Or what was Jake's argument there? You're saying that it's not a sky clock because the moon has a new moon, or what? Or that it's not useful for a time keeping because you can't
I
see
mean,
it?
it's if this is you're saying that this is an engineered tool, right? That it's not just some natural product of nature of a natural process, right? You're saying this is an engineered device, like a Rolex, right? That was
I
the guy
think
Yeah, that's
designing.
the implication. Sure.
I think Carlos said that, but yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's a very highly refined timepiece. Yeah.
You're living inside a
Why,
machine of some
why
sort of
couldn't you just
cosmic
say that about?
spiritual order.
Yeah, but
Like
why
Witz had
why
said
couldn't
once,
you
he
just?
said Witz said we're living within a time machine. He came in one day, this was a long time ago, and he kind of like it was kind of quiet in here, so he just like said a bunch of stuff and then he left. And at the very end of it, he's like, yeah, basically we're in a something time machine. I forget the exact words he said, but he didn't mean like, like a Back to the Future time machine. The way I kind of thought about the way he said it, it's like we're in this massive machine of time, like the sky. Anyways, the way he said it was pretty cool. But yeah, it's like we're in a
If you want
massive
to carry it to
machine of
that
time.
level, because humanity has used the sun, the moon, and the stars to track the passage of time, right, for millennia. You just might as well just say the entire sky is an engineered clock, and that its purpose is to be a clock.
Well, I mean,
My
let's try
stop
to
at
do
the
a
moon.
comparison with the heliocentric model. Would be that you've just got, on any sort of star out there is a timepiece of orbital bodies rotating around central, night and day, causing affect. So, I mean, they're all just timepieces in the sky at that point, right? I can try to draw some here. I know it sounds like a pretty whimsical idea just to say that we live inside of a time machine, but that's just the nature of what would you call it? I don't know, the
I mean,
entire
I can just
experience of
use.
reality.
I mean, if we're going to take it that far, I mean, I can just use the incubation of an egg. I can just monitor the chicken eggs and use those to track time because I know how long those take, right? You can literally take any
You
natural
definitely can,
process
yeah.
that, that's cyclical, any natural cyclical process that consumes time, and you could use that and say that, the purpose of that, God made the chicken egg so that humans could track days, because we know that chicken egg is 28 days or whatever, 25 days or however for a chicken egg to hatch. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a big yellow golden center to that egg as well, which is interesting.
yeah, I mean, you could use your beard for the same thing. God made beards specifically to track time. I can tell, how many hours have gone by the length of the stubble on my face.
Yeah, but the egg one's interesting because, of course, the egg is
They call
connected
it
to the cycles of the stars and the moon cycle and all that. So the egg is connected to nature, it seems, through some of those same cycles. The
So
growing of
is
the
so is my
hair,
beard. My
I don't
beard
know.
grows at a steady
That's
pace.
why they call it a 5 o'clock shadow, bro.
Exactly. God made beard so that we can track time along the day.
But yeah, doesn't that just indicate that there's a connection between, like, the celestials seem to be the main thing. I mean, they are like the gears of the whole system. Like the sun, the moon, our day cycles. I mean, the earth is the earth, the ground, and all that. But I mean, the sky seems to be like the ultimate clock, like the ultimate one. Because these other things you're saying, they have variations. Your beard is going to be different depending on what you eat, and your own things like this. Even females' reproductive cycles are different. Even a chicken egg, they're not all the same. They're a little bit varied. But the sky is very, very precise. So it would be like, seems like the ultimate, like, nature's synchronistic timepiece, and then all of these other things like in nature are sort of like imperfect mirrors of those celestial cycles and all of these other biological cycles like you're talking about, or they're like,
I mean,
semi symmetrical, but they're not exact.
then why do we not have an even number of days in the year? I mean, if it was made to be a clock, why would God make it so that a year is not symmetrical? I mean, if we're designing a time system, we would never make a situation like that where you get this weird uneven number of days to make a year. You have to constantly make corrections for.
I'd say actually, if you end up with too much symmetry inside of any system, it starts collapsing. It doesn't have enough variety or variability to it. So it's kind of like a balance between order and chaos at that point.
Right. So now this is just an unfalsifiable religious claim, because if it's too perfect, then it wouldn't be any good. If it's not perfect, it's an indicator that it's designed. Like there's like
You'll
literally
find,
no way that this thing could fail by your description, because anything that I use to criticize it, you're going to have some rebuttal for. Like, well, God can't make it too perfect because then it would be obvious,
I didn't invoke
right?
the fact that it would be too obvious. I said that the symmetry would not allow for enough creativity and creation. It's too symmetrical.
Well, I mean, God did that when he created every animal on Earth uniquely, and he made them all, bilaterally symmetrical. With, if we're talking about vertebrates, they all have four limbs, and they're bilaterally symmetrical, and they've got a central nervous system in one space. You know what I mean? Like, there's there. Everything is symmetrical, right? I mean, why did God have symmetry there? There's no creativity displayed in the animal world.
I mean, what is it? Your question is that there's not enough order within the like observable reality. It's kind of interesting. My interpretation of heliocentric is that there's just too much chaos to sort of account for the amount of symmetry and pattern be like patterns that sort of occur. So we've got problems on both models in that sense. But I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in with some words of wisdom. At some point, though, we've just got to sort of shrug and say, I mean, that is just the nature of the world that we find ourselves in. I guess, what would it be? If you want to try to extrapolate any other like rationale or reason for what you observe, I don't know. It would seem to me that human beings are capable of multiple interpretations from the same source data. So it seems to be dependent upon their experiences in the world and the ideas that they've come across. You're sort of like habituated into certain interpretations, and this sort of emerges from culture and how you refer to it. But, yeah. Like my background is in design. I doubt if I hadn't have done design work and like really thought about the system of how something is designed, I'd probably not be on this side of the fence. I see too much symmetry in the world. I see too much of there's too much order for it not to be like almost of or by design, with intentionality, with the purpose of creating meaning. So I don't know. Other people seem to sort of just look at it and think there's too much chaos for it to be designed. I don't know. Where do you land?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's very easy to see design where there is none, right? Like people see, I mean, just the human mind is pattern seeking, right? So people will see, they see Jesus in their toast, or they'll have some event that happened to them and say, oh, I knew my dad, in heaven, he made that happen because he needed to teach me a lesson, and he knew that was what I needed at the time, right? Like it's kind of a very human thing. And I think it's very easy as humans to attribute design to things, right?
I think sometimes it's a bit too easy for people to say that there wasn't a cause. Like if you find Jesus in your toast, man, I mean, do you not start going and looking at the elements, or maybe like maybe there's some sort of heat resistant like material that's put on that bread in order to create it? So I mean, it's not some sort of whimsical sort of like Jesus popped out of my toaster situation. It's like, okay, well, what further can we investigate here?
And I would definitely say the people that fund the science and the pinnacle research and exploration are into the divine. And some pretty smart
it's
people.
It's a curious one. Like if you've ever seen that documentary, it's been brought up a couple of times recently. It's called The Principle. And it would seem that they've actively made a decision that despite the observations of the celestial observations, in which they basically infer that the universe is flat, whatever they mean by that. Curious terminology for them to use. And then what's the other one? That we seem to be at the center of it. And then they fob that away on the notion of like you're in the middle of the raisin bread expanding situation, which, I mean, it solves the problem, I guess, but you just got to come up to it for a decision for yourself as to whether or not you want to believe that. The interpretation from that documentary seems to be that they've actively made a decision to not interpret that we live at the center of creation. Like, despite the fact that the observation tells them that, they're finding every other which way to make the excuse that we're not. So make of that what you will. But yeah.
But if creation is everywhere, then everywhere is the center, right?
If creation is everywhere, so
that would be more like what you would expect a God to do, right? To have infinite creation in all directions, right?
Yeah, it's got a pole.
Why would he make
I
a
don't
sun
know
on one
about that.
place and then a bunch of space in another place, right? You would think that an infinitely
Well,
powerful, infinitely creative creator would put creation everywhere. Why would he be, you know what I mean? Like,
We
if you're
don't know, right?
decorating a
this is my
backyard, you're not
point.
going to do all your decoration in one spot. You decorate the whole yard from end to end, wall to wall, right?
I mean, that
We
would
don't
be
know that.
assuming that there's only one creation and only one creator. I mean, I do leave a bit of a reservation for the idea that you just find yourself in whatever this interpretation of a dimension is, and I don't know, maybe once it's all said and done, you go somewhere else, or maybe you've come from somewhere else, and that was the deal that you made when you came here. That you're going to be brought into it without knowledge, without knowing, for some reason, for some purpose. But
Rastafari. Nah.
I mean, if you're inside that loaf of bread, which I mentioned before, right, which is rising and expanding, and you said, like, what is it? If creation is everywhere or something, so you're inside the loaf of bread, and the bread is everywhere, but there must be something outside of that loaf of bread, essentially. I don't know. I suspect that there are limits to the created realm. What those limits are, sure. Maybe like the whole sort of, what would you call it? The laws of physics start breaking down at the extent, like maybe gravity or whatever you want to refer to that as, or maybe the pressure starts collapsing so that material can't coalesce into molecules, and then you got nothing but quarks and quasars or whatever they refer to these days left over. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's all speculation. It's just people smoking weed on a couch at this point, just speculating on shit.
Well, as I said
I'm not
before, I
even.
mean, that
Some
just look at that
some of
documentary
the
called The Principle, man, where they actively make a decision to, like, they find the notion that you live at the center of creation to be an abhorrent idea because it gives you a special, like a special location within that creation, potentially. I mean, you even sense that within your psyche. When you think of yourself, right, you are you are the center of importance. You look after yourself first. That allows you to look after others. If you get that in the wrong order, you collapse. You can't help anyone else. You perceive the world through your eyes. This is all through your perception, but psychologically, consciously, you're expected as a social creature to engage with others and recognize what their personal interpretations are and respect them, right? You can't just be selfish or else you become a psycho. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. My parents looked after us over their kids. They suffered mentally and physically in order to provide for us. Seem to
Yeah,
have
there
worked
is
out.
definitely a different special relationship between the progeny and the parent. Certainly, that I mean, you could argue that that progeny, that child, is a part of them. That is their self. Like, you'll quite often see that people will be biased towards their own children as opposed to other people's children. So that's just because that child is theoretically, right, psychologically, an extension of themselves.
I mean, you could just say
I mean,
that
it's
about all of
possibly,
humanity, right? We're all related to one another at some point, right? We could just say we're all related to one another.
yeah, which is where I think, like, when you get into the psychopathy of was it sociology, and I think I've heard Gio mention or comment on this a couple of times, but I mean, there is just this sort of, to some extent, there's a hallucination of separation between you and other people. Like, if you go talk to people and you're looking to try to have an argument with them to find the difference, you'll find it. And if you go out there and you try to find the commonality with other people, you'll find that as well. It's all just about what you're sort of letting into your field and the way that you want to interact with it.
That was interesting. I hope I'm coming through. I've only got one bar. Am I coming through?
Kinda, yeah, we hear you for now.
Check. Yeah, I've only got one bar, so
I don't know if it's coming through, but that was interesting how you said that. Hallucination of separation. That rhymes too. Putting it that way, Terry. A hallucination of separation.
Yep. And what is it, like the two primary
potential, like the idea of the collective unconscious.
Well, so many of our major sort of forms of psychological and even economic theory, capitalism and communism, right? They're just communism is professes that it is trying to unite people, although we know the delusion there. Maybe too much uniting actually going on, but then capitalism is just leaving leaving the individual out high and dry. So I mean, it's all sort of trying to articulate, though, a relationship between you as an individual, a personality with drive, meaning, and purpose, right? And your relationship with the collective and everyone else. And it's so essentially trying to define what that relationship should or should not be.
Yeah, it's that polarity between the one and the many, and all of the layers of that, like you said, and like finances, like you said, capitalism is kind of somewhat more of an exploitation, or or at least it is now, the current system, where it's kind of exploiting the individual for the benefit of the few, but there is sort of the survival of the fittest style. I mean, capitalism is kind of a generalized. There's a lot of layers to that, but I mean, the version we're in today has a whole separation between the sort of classes and everything that's involved and the way that can be manipulated. I think set up why they use it. But yeah, there's whole layers of that involved in that, just between the one and the many, and how the separation is kind of like handled within that level. Yeah, within like the financial. But I mean, if we all knew that we were all one, like, wouldn't we treat each other so much better if that was the case? It's like the way that you want to like be healthy, let's say, for your body, because you know that you're kind of one with your body, like your mind is, or your soul is in some way one with it. Although I guess some people abuse their bodies too, but it's like if you knew that everyone was actually made of the same thing and of the same consciousness that you were, then you would then want to help everyone to be as happy as they could, rather than the survival of the fittest, capitalism, like I just get mine for me and then you get yours for you and I don't really care about you kind of vibe. That's going on a lot in the world today.
You ever hear that theory, Gio, that there's only one soul and it lives every life on Earth is lived by the same soul, and that you're going to experience or have experienced every life on Earth? And so in the end, when you harm someone else, you're just harming yourself. You ever hear that one?
Yeah. There's a couple kind of variations on that. I'm trying to pick up on the kind of one that the type that you're describing, but yeah, I mean, just from that idea that there's like one source, and then we're all living the lives of that source, and therefore we are all these other lives. Ultimately, a liminal separation.
It's sort of like reincarnation, but that ultimately there's only like one soul that's reincarnated, and you experience the entire spectrum of humanity because that one soul has lived every life. And, right, like the ones in our time right now where we're concurrently living, you're still able to, it's separate from time and space. So it's like that same soul is concurrently experiencing all the lives that you're interacting with every day.
I suspect that this is where the concept of the so that you're a light being, and light itself, like white light, even sort of infrared light, all these light, they break off into different spectrums. And then you've got this sort of connection with the chakras and different light sources, and you're just sort of an arrangement of those different lights, energies coming into the world. It starts getting a bit whimsical for me at that point, but the analogy works quite well, I think. Like if the spirit is just source, and then you're just like one of the sort of what is it, through refraction or through the like the biological human experience, just like light interacts with material and then sort of breaks off into different components.
Yeah, dude. No, I was gonna comment on that too, and I was gonna say something about holograms. I love talking about holograms and link with this because with a hologram you have like a one light beam, and then it functions through the interference of the light, which splits the beam, which is similar like in interferometry. You have the beam splitting, but in holography you also have the beam splitting. Beam of light is this split into multiple, through light interference, through multiple representations of the original. And each of those parts that are made in the splitting, each one contains the whole in some fundamental way, meaning you can replicate the whole image from one of those split beams in each one. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting correlations between like consciousness and light and holograms and how holograms work. And it kind of links to what you were saying. Like if there's one source that is at the root of everything, that would be like the light, the initial source of light. Then each of us would be like in this kind of analogy, would be like a refracted light, like a through light interference, as it were, like a separation, some kind of a temporary separation. And then even though we feel separate and we are a separate image of the source, we feel like we are separate, but ultimately, the whole source can be replicated in each one of us, which then you can link in like the types of spiritual experiences people have of being like one with all of nature and one with all of creation, those kinds of levels where people experience the totality within them. It's not like it's just only for some special people. It's like everybody has the ability to access that. But yeah, so like if we're all those kind of refracted versions, and then each one of us can on that level as well, but we're also like a kind of temporary portion of that light, or like a refracted version of it. Pretty interesting, all those connections with that. And people also talk about like in their spiritual journey, like when they get to the completion of it, that it has to do with that type of coming to the realization that they are. It's like the idea of like enlightenment, coming to the realization of who you really are, like your true nature, and that you were not really a separate being. You thought you were separate, and you experienced it as separate. But in the end, when that's why you look at all the ancient traditions and the wisdom that they refer to when you reach these peak experiences is like a remembrance or a realization. Like there's that phrase, thou art that, in the Vedic traditions, thou art that, which is like you are it. And it's coming to that realization that you actually were the source all the time. You were the creator of yourself and the originator of the entire thing. Like you were a manifestation of yourself, and then you finally kind of gotten back to remembering your true nature.
Well, we flux and flow in and out of that quite often. I mean, that's what I find personally in my experience. If I don't get enough alone time, I want to separate. And other times, sometimes you feel too isolated, and you want to, I don't know, catch up with friends and find yourself in a community or whatnot. So you sort of flux and flow between these two. It's like an expansion and contraction between those two. I mean, you could even say, is it like when you go through your teenage years, like you're so, as a kid, you're so dependent, and then you go through your rebellious teenage years as a kind of a recoil to being looked after and coddled too much. So you go out and you got to go find your independence, and this is where you sort of start crafting yourself at that point.
Yeah, for sure. The polarity between like dependency and interdependency and how that all plays out within a human life. Yeah. Well, do you think it's enough of an explanation that like that there's a source of everything that is then splitting itself into all these different lifetimes to experience all these different temporary journeys that feel separate? And then foundational explanation of what's going on in this whole experience in life and all of this, that we're all like a temporary
And then
separation
like,
and that we came from
well,
somewhere,
I mean,
wherever we came, we're going back to.
I'm still working primarily with a sort of, I don't know how to refer this as, but like a conventional scientific interpretation, but I try to extrapolate it. And that would be to say that, what, I mean, you're born into this world, you're 99.9% the same as me, essentially, and anyone else listening in at the moment. So you're sort of like, you're kind of born into this world platform that is the human experience. So yeah, you're already connected. Have to be. Can't not be.
I mean, if you knew that you were the source at your core being, and that you, because you are the actual source, you get to experience every single thing that's ever existed at some point. Like if you are that source ultimately, and you're only on like a temporary journey or like a temporary trip right now, if you are that source, like to me, that triggers like immense excitement to think that I could experience what it's like to be Michael Jordan in his prime, or what it's like to be, you know, a dolphin soaring through the water, or any number of things. Now, there's a lot of unpleasant things too. I mean, people dying of a cocaine overdose, of a heart attack. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are pretty brutally painful as well. So if we experience all those as well, then I guess there's the good and the bad. But there's so many things that you can't experience in one lifetime ever, no matter what. Like you'll never know what it's like to be a dolphin soaring through the water, kind of, or you know, a woman giving birth if you're a man, or just all of these different things. But if we are the source, and that would mean that at the core level, we actually are all of those experiences. And to me, that just makes me really excited to think that I'm not just this limited person that'll get to experience things, but actually like that eternally I will be able to experience those things. And that makes creation a lot more interesting and exciting to think why we would do all this. I mean, there is the challenging things, which are, that's a whole thing as to why we would create unpleasant things. But either way, like even those unpleasant things might be experienced as interesting from that higher level. So does that activate that in you? Like if you are the source and you can experience all of these things, you know, on some higher level, like eternally, doesn't that sound awesome?
I don't know, Geo. No, I'm opposed to that a little bit. Just sort of sentimentally thinking about that. Is that the right terminology? Just sort of, I don't know, just feeling it out. I'd be scared of sort of concept personally. Like that's like sort of dissolving of ego at that point, and it's not something, I don't know. People say that they've dissolved egos and all that shit. I don't know what that means personally. I have a little bit of trouble with the concept, but I kind of get it, you know. But the idea of, what is it, losing your sense of self. I don't know. I've had some pretty hardcore drug experiences where you lose that. It's fucking scary. So I'm not sure if I'd necessarily sit well with the idea that you know, I'd lose my individuality and sort of just to jump into the skin of someone else. I don't know. Crazy idea though.
Well, what if you? Well, what if you? Duality, you know, and you incorporate other things. Well, I mean, at some point, I hear what you're saying. You're not. I mean, if you're experiencing what it's like to be Michael Jordan in his prime, then yeah, you're obviously not in your ego structure of you, your person, or what, for me, like not who I am today. So yeah, in that sense, it is separate from that. But I guess what I'm saying is, you know, that thing where you look at someone and you both smile. You know, you've had those times, like it could be a friend or family member, but even just sometimes strangers, as it were. We call them strangers, but other people you don't know, where you just look at each other and you both smile. You know, there's just this kind of recognition of like, I see you, you see me, and there's this kind of almost recognition that you're similar or even the same, or there's this kind of like almost like you're looking in a mirror kind of experience. But I guess what I'm saying is like, could you actually retain that kind of feeling of selfhood, but it's just like the temporary part that was separate is what vanishes. I guess is what I'm saying. So like you could still feel like that part that you feel is yourself when you smile and look at yourself in the mirror, that you could still feel that when you are experiencing Michael Jordan's life, because he's experiencing it as well. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's kind of like the universality of that, to where you're not really losing who you are. You're actually becoming more of who you are, and then retaining your individual self information when you get to that higher level. Like you retain it. It's within it basically, rather than losing it. Like, I'm saying you wouldn't lose anything at that level. You would only be incorporating more of the totality.
Well, and it's like you got to be ready for it, maybe, to be Michael Jordan. I mean, that intense, but like, or not ready at all, or not knowing. That happens a lot with little kids. They'll just see you in your car or whatever, and if you look at them, they're like locked in and smiling. But sometimes it happens with girls with me. I don't know. It's like, wait, do you like me? Never mind. If you're open to it, though, you can. Everybody's level.
Yeah, it kind of goes down to the nature of consciousness. Like, what is consciousness, and how does it function between the separation and the whole, and being more than like the consciousness that's beyond who we are. So yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, because that word consciousness is kind of general, but or can be looked at as general. But if that's like part of how you feel, if you then were to move into a different state, like what happens when you die, what happens to your consciousness, kind of thing. I don't think it ceases to exist at all. So I think it just transforms into something that's more of the totality rather than less of it. That's why I think death is actually awesome. It's like it's just like it's like being lit on fire forever. Things are awesome. Like, oh, that's fire. Like when you die, you actually become more of who you are. If you lose, you actually become more of it, because in that afterlife state, the entire existence of your life exists in that afterlife. So you haven't left it. Like you haven't left behind your life where you're like crying, like, oh, I left all my family. That's just, I don't see it that way. The people on Earth might feel like that because they feel the separation, being a human. But for the person who died, they're actually going to a state of consciousness in which their entire lifetime that they lived is retained there in eternity. Therefore, they have all of the knowledge of their entire life, so they're not really leaving it. Like they're just in a place where that exists and a bunch more exists, because now you're in the after death state.
It's all laid out, yeah, and like Enoch. Reverse birth. I mean, that simple.
Analogies of like if you're in the womb with a twin and you're both little babies, little fetuses in the womb, and then you're like, the one twin says to the other, "You think there's life? There's life, on the other side?" Then the other twin, like, "No, I don't think so," kind of thing, that. And then there's the idea of, is there life on the other side? And you're sitting there.
I don't know, it's got me thinking.
I kind of think of it as like if you have like a movie. Go ahead.
I mean, I've spent what I feel like, this is a bit more of a personal take, right? Like overcoming what is essentially like some pretty severe self-consciousness, and sort of just general, how would you say, like not being fond of people. I kind of curious, would you call yourself like a gregarious type of person, like highly sociable? You want to, like, you see someone over there and you want to go have a chat and say hi? Yeah, I don't sort of necessarily get that. Quite often I just want to be left alone. Kind of funny. And I spend all my time on social platforms. Hilarious.
I mean, if you're asking me personally, I'm kind of with that. I guess maybe 50-50. I mean, sometimes like at parties, I might actually just want to be kind of almost away from people.
Breaking up for me.
But I'm probably more on the introverted side. Oh, that was all breaking up.
Yeah. What's your son?
Yeah, pretty much that whole middle section. Yeah.
Sounds like me, kind of. I think like a party is different. Everyone's on a lower level, or I don't know. But yeah, and then social media, you have your social on social media. I think you just get going. I would be quiet, but once you start talking,
Yeah, I don't know. That's the only reason I was trying to think of why Geo has this sort of fondness of this idea of sort of once it's all said and done, I suppose. He likes the, or he's fond of the idea of experiencing what it would be like to, I mean, just pick it Michael Jordan or whatever it was. And then for me, I'm a little bit more perturbed by the idea. And I was trying to think about it, and it sort of maybe just relates back to the fact that I've been trying to overcome what I feel like for most of my life is a pretty sort of debilitating form of like social anxiety. For all intents and purposes, like I present pretty normal, but when I was a child, I was very shy. Like when I had to start doing bloody public speaking at university for all my presentation, holy shit, that was something to overcome. But yeah, I don't know. It's the only reason I could rationalize why potentially like sort of Geo's landing in a different location or a fondness of the idea of interconnection. But I appreciate the response there, Geo.
Yeah, man. Might be a little better now. I got 2 bars. But yeah, that's interesting to think of it that way. I guess my response was I'm kind of 50-50 with the introvert extrovert thing. I'm probably a little bit more introverted, but I mean there's times at a party where yeah, I will go up to people or be really more outgoing, but I tend to probably be a bit more introverted in a way, or just maybe like hanging out with 1 or 2 people at the party rather than being like, the center of a circle of people telling jokes or whatever. But yeah, I don't. Well, that factor. I wonder if that is a factor, the introvert extrovert thing. Whether like the idea of living other people's lives or experiencing all of that. But I kind of would think that would be happening on a level that's far beyond like the human individual ego, because each human would have their own like introvert extrovert things going on, or maybe even different things they experienced as a child that or just in their life that might be connected more to either being more extroverted or introverted. Because there's some people that have like an overly charge of extroversion where they're almost like boisterously loud at a party or something, and then there's other people that are more kind of laid back, almost to a point of like being a hermit kind of thing. So there are kind of extremes like within one lifetime. But I guess I see how you're making the link though. Yeah, like the idea of like living Michael Jordan's life on another level of consciousness. You're saying that would be linked to like being more extroverted or more extroverted rather than kind of being more reserved around that? Was that link?
I suspect so. Like, I've got a friend of mine. He's so sociable. His father was very sociable. His father before him was a preacher. So whatever that means. But like he's a family photographer. Like he is the life of the party. He loves going and like he wants to go talk to people. He wants to know everything about them. I really, for me personally, like I go through phases. Sometimes I really just want to know what other people are doing and what they're up to, and I'm kind of just broadly, generically, I suppose, interested in other people and what they're doing. But then I don't know. For the most part, I suspect for whatever reason, I imagine this is more to do with what's the terminal, like how I was raised, like to be a bit more socially conservative. Just because of that, I just look at my parents and I'm like, holy shit, you guys are you very much keep to yourselves. So I won't go into too many personal details there. Not that it's really sort of bad or good, but I don't think anyone really wants to hear it. But that other friend of mine, he's just amazing. The amount of effort and energy that he puts in, like I just get sick of other people after a bit. But look, I've had times where I've gone out and I was the center of attention at a party before as well, and that was quite an interesting experience. Like I was the extrovert one. I was the one like sort of let's go here, let's go there, let's organize here. How are you? Making fun, making jokes. Like I was the center of attention at that point. So whatever reason, my stars aligned for that evening, and was feeling particularly sociable and made the most of it. But it's just not my standard average.
It was the stars.
What was that?
I just pulled in a parking garage. I don't know why I'm talking, but you got me? Or I just said it was the stars, but
Sometimes I think that. But I also I was taking a bit of a lead off that friend of mine as well, and I was like, I want to be a bit more like him and less like myself. So for whatever reason that evening, I was capable of sort of just putting on a different face and almost putting on a different mask or a different face. I wasn't amongst my common friends. It was a sort of some, what would you call it? Like not strangers per se, but friends of friends out at a party one time.
yeah, I think that is what a lot of people do. They kind of become other people as they grow up instead of, themselves a little different, better. But so that can kind of happen with people that are that personality, I guess, the extroverted or whatever. And if you pick up on it, flow. And it's not that hard. I was always super logical with females, and it's kind of just fun and emotion and too easy. But I think signs are important. Maybe not short term, but if you're with people for a long time or in some situation, that would come out. Sure. Or
No, but Tarek, I'm still kind of thinking about how you were linking that. It's interesting, the introvert extrovert thing to what I was saying that after you die on some higher level of consciousness, could you experience other people's lifetimes? Or it's interesting to think of that. Like I guess I wouldn't have thought, because I kind of would think that introvert extrovert is more of something when you're in a lifetime. Like one person in their lifetime has the introvert extrovert, and we're talking about the astrological kind of components of that. And because when you're born, that's your birth chart kind of a thing. So even the way that links in, you have your birth chart, and then that birth chart might be one that's more extroverted, rather than introverted. All these luminary alignments astrologically, they're all archetypal, so they can express themselves in a wide range, but they're still within those archetypes. And there definitely are certain alignments that will be way more outgoing. We all have known someone that's really outgoing or really kind of loud or very personable in that way, whereas other people are completely the opposite. But the fact that the birth chart is for that lifetime, it makes me think that it's more of an imprint for that lifetime. Whereas the idea of after you die, then experiencing other things. But I see how you could link that though. The idea that you'd have to have kind of almost an extroverted soul energy maybe to want to experience what it would be like to be Michael Jordan in his prime or something like that. Rather than if you were more introverted, you'd be no, I'm good on that. I'd rather just, maybe not have that much of a. But I guess to me, when I brought it up, it was just more of that excitement that this is not all there is, basically, that this one lifetime that I've lived, which is obviously limited, is not all there is. And then on the higher level, if we are all actually the source at our core being, and we're eternal, then that means that we have access eternally to every single life that's ever happened, and that we are those lives. So just on that level, it would kind of link back to just that universality level of it. And to me, that's exciting because I want to experience a lot more than what I've experienced in this one life. So that's why it just feels just opening the floodgates to all kinds of additional interesting things. Whereas right now, I know in my only one lifetime, it's going to be limited. No matter what I experience for the rest of my years, it's obviously limited compared to what's all out there.
I mean, what is the fascination with Michael Jordan? Excuse me, because I'm an Aussie fella, and that's some guy in America who jumps really high and puts balls in baskets and stuff. But I never
And
understood that. Any of these spectacular sort of sportsmen, I've always found a little bit sort of obnoxious that they should garner such attention. I always thought of it as a product of our society, sort of more interested in sort of physique and competition in a sense. But yeah,
but
I don't know. That's just my commentary on it.
No, I hear you. Yeah, that was just one example I brought up. I just said, I hear you though. Well, yeah, he's like one of the best, arguably one of the best basketball players to have ever lived. But you could say Tiger Woods or like, dude, I want to know what it's like to be Tiger Woods playing golf. Like, I would love to know what that's like, to be that good at golf. Like, that's so cool.
no, I would say Jordan though. It's like the brand thing, like him, the person, like allegedly wasn't on his college or high school team, but then it's like gets passed on the shoe deal, makes the best shoe deal ever. The championship thing, like the numbers on that were weird. There's a lot of weird times on the clock, with the sixes, like, but very magical. So, but the timing of that, like a person and a brand, yeah, and that's just kind of like I was saying earlier about being yourself and making it as big as possible instead of being like Michael Jordan, and that was his ad actually. So that's the next generation
That's
got
interesting.
programmed to.
I mean, theoretically, you could be that. If you sort of devoted yourself to the notion of competition. I suspect that the game of basketball just happens to suit the morphology that Jordan took on, and he's I'd have to look at his astrological chart to see whether there's nature versus nurture going on there or something. But I mean, look, don't get me wrong. The idea of being able to sort of like Tiger Woods style, right, where you've got to have such sensitivity with a golf club during a great time of, where you should be nervous. There's a lot riding on the line, and just to maintain your composure. I mean, that'd be kind of cool and interesting. I get nervous all the time. Don't like it. But it'd be nice to be able to have such composure and experience that.
Yeah, like I don't think I'll ever. You have to have a certain level of natural skill to be really good at sports, though. Like I was pretty good at golf. I played in high school. I didn't really play competitively in college, but I did play in high school, like on the golf team and stuff. And I also played baseball. But I was pretty good at golf to a degree. But no matter how much I practiced, I would never be as good as Tiger Woods. I mean, obviously, same with 99.99 repeating percent of the world, because there's certain like just natural skill that you need. You got
to be half Asian, Gio. Is he half Asian? Got to have that Asian intensity to focus on stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
definitely. He showed that, portrayed that composure and that confidence and the technical stuff, but developed that skill too. I mean, but he was definitely Jordan like 2.0 kind of, and he did a brand, but that's all opened up for everybody now, kind of on YouTube. And
well, who's the latest guy? I saw it on the TV. The latest pro golf, like American Open or I don't know what US Open, whatever it is. The latest winner, and one of his comments was that I don't know. He just seems like a cool, relaxed guy. He's not intense. Like in fact, the fact that he was more relaxed and he didn't put too much into the notion of winning seems to have been, I mean, attributably the reason why he managed to sort of keep it cool and bring home the cup. Essentially, that's interesting in itself.
Like dominant, like as good as Tiger. The slide in your foot swing. I mean, he's intense, or he's probably. But he had a very interesting like press conference statement where he's just like, this winning thing lasts for like 2 minutes, and like And for Tiger, it was all about like, I win. He willed everything so strong, and Scheffler is definitely a breath of fresh air for like. He's like, it's about family, man. Like, we talk about it, at dinner, and then it's like on to the next one, and it's not really the best life. Chase that.
It is fascinating, man. Because I mean, I've like golf as far as. Oh, sorry, someone else was jumping in.
Flat Earth, I think he left.
He'll be back.
Oh, maybe. Yo, Kenny, I think you dropped out.
Kenny. What was I going to say?
Well, I mean, we could talk about. But you
Go
could take anything. Just I guess well, go ahead. But the example I was giving, like, you could take anything. Like I'll probably never be like one of those like really talented divers that goes up to like over 100 feet and does a bunch of twists and twirls and like what's that like for that person to experience. Anyway, I'm just saying for the example I gave, like it was more the idea that like if we are the source at our core, that means eternally we have access to all these experiences, whether it's being Tiger Woods in his prime or being a skydiver or paragliding or not landing on the moon and faking it. Like what was that like?
Well, I do wonder, right? Like that is essentially what the TV is doing for you when you go and watch someone doing that diving action, and you want to watch it and you're entertained by it. Like you are psychologically sort of how would you kind of like imposing yourself into that situation and trying to imagine what it feels, the sensation of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think about that too. All these YouTube shorts and TV and all this stuff, it's kind of replicating that. Like you kind of get this little God's eye view of someone else's life, and it's very interesting. That's why people love they love people watching. We love watching shows, movies, because you're kind of vicariously living their life for a minute, like in the movie, like in Breaking Bad. Like all of a sudden you're a meth cook, in some way in your mind, even though you're just watching the movie. But also video games. So yeah, it's kind of, and then just television in general, which obviously people love, but I think about that it kind of gives you like, dude, when I search through those YouTube shorts, like there's so many things that I see in there that I would never see otherwise, just some crazy, bottling machine in India and some guy that's able to bottle at a, really fast. It's like, wow, I never knew that. So that's kind of why I find it fascinating just to see all that. And I think that kind of links into this concept I'm saying that on some higher level, if we eternally are all of this, then that means that we would be able to have like the ultimate YouTube short movie video game, system in the world where you could actually experience in the body, or like experience the full thing rather than just watching it on a screen.
Well, yeah, I think when these pro athletes, I watch one too, and yeah, I don't think I'm trying to drive the car through the screen, but that's why TV is so powerful too, obviously. But they're doing stuff that's kind of faster than science as it happens, right? And obviously, you learn predictive skills and the NFL athletes that always give it up to God. They're like, I didn't even know, I just was doing stuff, and that amazing thing happened. But I think watching this stuff and thinking you can do it, the first step to being able to, or imagination and kind of, it's always said that like personations are a sign of intelligence and imagination. But just like a kid watches you do something and he's like, it can be done, you inspire. And like I've seen younger people do things and I'm like, I struggled with that. I just saw you do it, and for some reason I know how you did it or what you're thinking, kind of. So there's instruction, and then there's just like, whoa, you did it that way, or you do it and it makes sense. And obviously developing skill is very important in practice. That's what I didn't like about Tiger. I was kind of like, all right, this guy is cool to see confidence. There was a lot of other good golfers. Back to the discussion.
I feel like eye level up is here. So what was it like to be Agenus? So if we are the source of all creation, then when we die, maybe we could go live Agenus's life. Check it out. See what it was like to actually.
No, it would suck, dude. That would not be fun.
Why? Because he had cancer and all kinds of diseases and shit.
Yeah, a lot of other problems. A lot of struggle.
Yeah, that's true. That life would be one that would not really be a party to go relive or to go experience. From what I've heard of his life, yeah, it's true.
In a way, it would be like fulfilling, but yeah, it would be a battle.
Yeah, well, look at Tiger Woods, or I mean Jordan had it. I'm not trying to take it back to that, but yeah, it's a balance. Like I think we're kind of here for that, like that suffering and temporal, physical stuff.
Yeah, from a
Part of
human level, we kind of attracted towards things that are pleasurable, and then repelled from things that are unpleasant, and we kind of seek the pleasurable and don't seek the unpleasurable. Except for people that have like sadomasochism, where they actually do seek the unpleasurable, but that's kind of a twist in the whole logic of it because there is that. But from a higher level, like if you were an eternal, like if you were in the state of an eternal being, like omnipotent, omnipresent, you can create time, you can create matter, you can create anything you want just eternally. Perhaps like that source doesn't really differentiate between pleasure and unpleasure in the same way. Like maybe it's all just experience. It would seem like it would have to be that to some degree because there's so many unpleasant things that are experienced that you would think, why would it ever do that? Like if you're omnipotent, omnipresent, you can create anything you want. Why would you not just create joyful things forever? So it implies that perhaps like it doesn't have that same judgment. When I say it, I mean I think that's ultimately us at our source. I'm not really saying it's something separate, but I'm saying that state of consciousness would maybe not differentiate in the same way. I mean, good is still good and bad is still bad. I'm not saying that it's just like that it is evil, but maybe in experience wise, it would actually just be craving the differentiation of different experiences, including unpleasant ones and pleasant ones, because it adds to the overall amount of things that can be experienced. It would have to be something like that, because otherwise it just wouldn't experience the negative stuff. It would just never want to, but it seems to specifically choose it, like having people addicted to drugs, all kinds of stuff that people go through, car accidents, like crazy stuff that it seems to bring on, disease in general. Like, why would you invent disease if you didn't want to actually experience disease? But it is
Yeah,
invented. And
I think you've got to be there has to be a small amount of masochism, I think. I mean, when I go for a run, I hate myself and it's all painful and shit. I don't like it. Terrible. But after I'm done, holy shit, the relief, like the amount of, like, I can go 2-3 days and having a good time. So, and I'm always in this sort of this balance between being fit and exercising and this sort of more slovenly sort of style myself. But yeah, I think, like, it's kind of interesting that whatever biology we've been born into, you have to challenge yourself in order to sort of feel good. If I can just break it down so simply, and that challenge is painful.
You know, and it feels good to go attack it. You know, like paddle out and surf or whatever. It's like get addicted
Well,
to
that's the
that.
thing, isn't it? I've always interpreted it as like, if you choose it, if you actively choose it yourself, right? So I mean, you're going to succumb if you don't do and run around and use your body. You're going to feel pain because your body is going to start wasting away, and you've seen that before. My father's kind of a bit anti-exercise actually, and he's suffering, I think, a lot from the consequences of that logic that he's arrived at. So it sort of provided me with a sort of an exemplar of what essentially not to do. But what's very interesting is that if you actively go out and sort of choose to experience pain, then that responsibility that you've taken seems to provide you with a reward, which is just, I don't know, it's fascinating to me.
yeah, that is.
You're
I
not going
know. But then, dude, could that be said? Could that be said for a lifetime? Like, if you're from the idea that you're a soul and that you're reincarnating through many lifetimes, this would require that. What I'm about to say, would it then be implied that if you took on a challenging lifetime, like maybe you were blind or maybe you had some disability or whatever it might be, that just I'm trying to make the link between, like, if you do the thing of like exercise, if you do the thing of exercising, which is unpleasant, and then you do it and then you get a reward after, could it be said that on another scale, from the reincarnational perspective, that if you took on a whole lifetime that was unpleasant or that was challenging, that there's a reward for the soul in that way? Like that they go through, instead of just going through an hour-long run in which you feel, like it's, working out, but then you feel better after. What about a whole lifetime and then your soul feels better after because you went through all that?
Yeah, it's like a ride. Do you want a scary ride? A scary movie?
I'd really like to hope so, Geo. I mean, the idea of being born with some sort of debilitating issues, it scares the shit out of me. I've imagined having a child with some sort of intellectual disorder, and it's just sort of that scares the shit out of me. Which is why I think, I mean, I've had my own sort of immunology problems and sort of fatigue issues, but I attribute that to some of the medical institution. It seems abhorrent to me that I don't know, if that was your experience to be born into the world in that way. Like, I'm so thankful that I'd had what I had. I'd say that if I had it too easy and I never got knocked with any health issues, that I'd probably be delusional and think that the medical system would be fine and go and dabble with it in my later life. So I'm kind of thankful for the fact that I connected the dots, and all I got to hope is that I'm on the right track, and in my later life I don't fall victim to the traps that they've set, essentially. But yeah, I don't know if that really gets at what you were saying, but the idea of being sort of born with some sort of debilitating problem like that I couldn't experience life properly. I shouldn't even say properly. That seems like a disrespectful statement to these people. But yeah, that would scare the shit out of me, though.
No, I hear you, dude. It is intense. I mean, what people go through. Yeah, absolutely. Like having childhood cancer, or just being blind, or just any number of things. Yeah, like, or you don't have arms, or you don't have legs, or yeah, I hear you, dude. I know it's very intense. Or you have some other
Down
kind of
syndrome.
disease. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, those Down syndrome guys seem so fucking happy, man. Like, they're so happy. I'm like, I'm envious of you being happy, but I don't really want the reason. I mean, the potential reason of why you're there. I don't know how to sort of square all that up.
I know a family, and they have
Yeah.
like two in their extended family, and it's like they all like recently, or the last one that was born, it was like, yeah, and it's a problem. But yeah, one of them's pretty old, and
Well, what if
somebody.
Sorry, bro. Your mic's kind of choppy. Sometimes I think you're done, but I think maybe you're just chopping
I
out.
was.
All good. No, it might have been roboting. Well, but it does seem hard to think but like, what if in order to grow as a soul, or to like get back to the source, or to like complete this whole thing, what if you have to actually go through, there's like a checklist of different lifetimes. Like, you have to be a woman, you have to be a man, you have to be blind in at least one life, you have to be gay in at least one life, you have to be rich in one life, you have to be poor in one life, or more than one, let's say. You have to be all those things. So, and what if there's like almost like a checklist, and then you basically, it's like in school, like you got to go through chemistry, you got to go through history, you got to go through all these classes and do the grind. Well, what if like on a soul level, you have to actually go through these things? Now, maybe you don't have to be every single disease or something. Maybe there's like categories, like, so maybe you don't have to die of every single disease ever, but maybe you do have to just die of like at least one in this family or one in that family, kind of thing of diseases. But if that was a thing, then wouldn't that set up a thing where the soul would actually want to take on a challenging life? Like you were saying, it scares you to do that. I hear you. Yeah, it does sound like a really challenging thing to take on, some of the things people have taken on. But like from a soul level, and if there is kind of like a checklist of sorts, like just like you were doing the exercising and doing the working out to feel better later, what if the soul actually like decides to go through that for a purpose of like growth and learning? And if there is like kind of like the analogy of like a checklist type thing, it's like going through it almost the way you would in like different courses in school or whatever, that you kind of have to go through them all. But would that set it up to where you would actually choose that experience instead of just being victim to it, but you're actually taking it on to go through it?
I don't know. I mean, the yogis all and the Buddhists sort of seem to be suggesting, and are we meant to actively choose to come back? I mean, is this multiple lives? I don't know. I do tend to sort of try to think of people more often when I come in contact with them, or even chat with people on these servers and stuff. Like, you're not that different to me, even if we disagree. Like, you're just some other version of me, essentially. I think it sort of helps facilitate sort of commonality and understanding. But I don't know, it's a very conscious application of it. But I mean, I don't know. What do they talk about? Should we reincarnate? Like sometimes some of these philosophies suggest that we're trying to not reincarnate, like you're trying to get out of that cycle. So I don't know what to make of that stuff, though, personally.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
I
but
think
you know that phrase. You know that phrase. The only way out is through. So there's that kind of idea that you can't just kind of jump ship. You have to actually go through the experiences. Like the only way out is through. So if that was the case, then it's sort of like it's like going down the water slide. Like you can't just walk down the steps and be like, you know, I'm going to skip on that. Like you actually have to jump on the slide and go down it. So if that's the case, but yeah, but I think there's also the idea that by jumping on the slide and going down it in that analogy, that's how you actually, you know, complete it. That's how you get through it. Sort of like taking on the courses or whatever, you know, if you need to go through them all. So like instead of just escaping, but that you actually have to go through it in order to, yeah, like in Buddhism, they talk about like the wheel of life and death and these whole karmic cycles. And then there's like these things that block you from getting off the wheel, like, you know, greed, ignorance, you know, lust, etc. There's these things that are kind of blocking you from getting off the wheel because you still have greed to work on, or you still have, you know, jealousy or lust or these different kind of sins, quote unquote, as it were, or you have these different things that are kind of keeping you on the wheel, and that by learning those things or how to manage those things, then is how you would get liberation from that.
right, and then like the harder boxes you check, shorter. But I like the idea that it's all just something different, you know, to put yourself in as far as the dimension, you know, like there is no good and bad things, and if you want to jump into where it is good and bad, it's going to be some fun either way.
I suppose what I imagine
Jokes.
at the moment is, I don't know, if there is such an option of not coming back, do I want to come back or not? At the moment, right now, in my kind of present way of thinking, like the idea of coming back and having these debilitating problems or being born, I don't know, somewhere in the Congo mining lithium for, you know, the global agenda and all that suffering that would be an entailment. I'd be trying to actively avoid coming back to avoid. Yeah, I don't know. It's, I don't know. If this whole thing is one and done, the idea that people come into this world with such debilitating problems just doesn't make sense to me. So theoretically, at that point, they've got to come back. The other option, though, where I think Gio's sort of suggesting is that, I mean, would you not want to come back and experience all these things? And I don't know, at that point, if it starts homogenizing, that everyone virtually at the end has the same experiences, do they all become the same thing? And then sort of then that's the ego death or something, which is a scary proposition, just like this merging of your conscious individuality into others. I'm not sure if I'm wanting that either. So I don't know what to make of it all there.
Hey, I just thought that, like, you know, if you're satisfied, like you're born crying, but if you die kind of legitimately satisfied, I guess, not with obviously your accomplishments, but you can kind of reverse out of it. Maybe you won't want to or won't come back as a butterfly and have no idea what.
Sometimes something that might be
Well,
sort of, do you guys know or wonder about this? I mean, there is talk about this idea that the elites sort of, you know, once they get to a certain level, they start imbuing themselves, you know, different souls and entities into their progeny. So, like, I mean, is that theoretically possible? Could I sort of, by the end of my life, work out and have enough wisdom or technique and whatever to sort of actually actively choose where I sort of manifest myself in the next one? I mean, that'd be ideal, if anything.
Yeah, you build a bunch of wealth, and then you just plan to reincarnate as your son's son. You build up
Yeah,
a
for
bunch of
sure.
wealth. You build up a bunch of wealth, billions of dollars, and then you have a son, and then when you die, you incarnate as your son's son or your son's son's son son. A couple routes down. There is even the idea. Yeah, well, maybe the controllers, as it were, maybe they're doing this to a degree. You get into the bloodline stuff and what they're doing with bloodlines. Like, it does seem like they're kind of creating certain bloodlines to maybe carry certain soul energies. And there's even an idea there, like, is that how they've ruled for so long because they're able to kind of reincarnate as their own? Although I tend to think reincarnation is like at a higher level than what they're doing. I don't think they can control that in my viewpoint, but there is a bloodline thing going on with what they're doing. But yeah, if you could just incarnate as your own son and then inherit all the money that you made before you died. I don't know. It's kind of a trippy idea, but